Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
This has come from British Gas, and the company has announced that it will be increasing its electricity prices by 12.5% in September. Apologies, their gas prices. And this is going to affect 3.1 million customers, a lot of people. Well, energy and services company Centrica, which owns British Gas, has released its interim results this morning, and that's where these figures have come from. Let's speak to their chief executive, Mark Hodges, about this. And with 3.1 million of your customers, this is not going to go down well. That is a huge jump in prices, 12.5%. Why such a huge hike?
Good morning. We've announced today a price increase for the first time in nearly 4 years. As you say, 12.5% on electricity, affecting around 3.1 million of our customers. I mean, really, it's in response to underlying increases in costs that we, and in fact many of our competitors, have seen over the past few years. Underlying electricity costs are increasing, and although we froze our prices last December, and we've held them down since then, we've just had to respond in the end to those underlying cost pressures.
I'm just going to, well, I was going to read you some of the comments that have come in on social media since we broke the news. I can't actually. Greedy is one of the words I can read out. This has come in from Matt G. He says, British Gas are hardly struggling for money. Their customers are. You have frozen prices. Why can't you do it for a bit longer? Because people are struggling at the moment. There's not enough pounds in their pocket.
We absolutely recognise that this is a difficult decision. We are still freezing our gas prices. They will stay at the current levels going forward. We haven't taken this decision lightly. We realise that 3.1 million people are affected. I should stress that around 5 million, just over 5 million of our customers are unaffected by today's news. But we've, in the end, had to respond, like many of our competitors, to just the underlying increases we've seen in electricity. Our costs have gone up over the past few years by around 16%. So in the end, despite our own efforts to try and keep our costs under control, our efforts to improve our service, we've just had to make this difficult decision.
You talk about a competitive market. Are you worrying you're going to lose customers over this? Because consumer power, people can now shop around and go to a different supplier. Are you worried you're going to take a hit customer-wise?
So we think competition is good. We've been on record saying that many times in the past. We're trying to improve our service consistently over time. We've just released our results today, which shows that our service is better yet again. Customers do have choice. They can move to many other companies. The barriers to switching are low, and that puts the pressure on us. That's why we don't make decisions like today's decision lightly. We're very thoughtful about the impact on our customers and on the number of customers that we're able to serve. But we'll continue to fight in that competitive market to try and innovate, to try and improve our service so that customers really do want to come to us and they want to stay with us. OK,
if you don't like it, you can move elsewhere. But you talk about the pressure that British Gas is under. Just explain to us what those pressures are and why it's forcing up the cost of our gas bills.
So just to reiterate, it's the cost of electricity that's going up in mid-September. Gas is remaining frozen going forward. And it's really a whole series of costs that largely we don't control. It's the costs of some of the social and environmental policies. It's the cost of transmission and distribution without getting too much into the technicalities. These costs have been going up over many years. We've been able to offset those through our own actions. And we've just not able to do that going forward from here.
You talk about the price of electricity going up, but hasn't the wholesale price of electricity gone down?
I think it's really important to think about the period of time you're thinking about. There are some short-term fluctuations in wholesale prices. They can go down very quickly. They can be down between the summer
So hang on a second.
and the
Wholesale
winter
prices have gone
consumption.
down, but you're putting prices up. I don't understand.
Wholesale prices over the last 12 months have not gone down. Our costs have gone up. There is an industry indicator which shows from May 16 to May 17, actually costs have gone up by 15%.
OK, so if you talk about fluctuations, there is a chance that maybe this time next year, these electricity bills, gas bills could go down.
We always want to keep our prices as low as possible. We understand the impact they have on customers, so any opportunity we have to either reduce our own costs, or if the costs that we incur that we don't control go down, of course we would consider passing that on as quickly as we can to our customers. That's why we were able to cut prices 4 times over the last 3 years.
OK, and we've just had a tweet in about people on prepaid meters. How are they going to be affected?
So prepayment meter customers today are unaffected by the announcement. That's actually a tariff that's set now by the regulator. There'll be an announcement, I think, in the next week or two about the next level of prepayment meter, the prepayment meter tariff, which will take place, or which will take effect from 1st of October. That's not something we control anymore.
Just, one thing before you go, this just puts the human element into this story. Obviously, I know you're coming at this as a big business. You have profits to look after. Everybody understands that. But we've just had a tweet in from Debbie saying, I haven't had a pay rise in 4 years. This British Gas increase will cripple me. What do you say to customers like that who are going to be affected?
So we're really very cognizant of the impact that this has on customers. In fact, in the announcement today, we've also said that there are around 200,000 customers who automatically receive the warm home discount payment. The customers we consider to be the most vulnerable, actually, we're not putting the increase through for them. They will receive a special credit so that they're not impacted. So we are trying to be thoughtful about the impact on people. We realise that any price increase is unwelcome news, and we'll continue to fight hard to improve our service, reduce our costs, so that these kinds of events happen as infrequently as possible.
OK, Mark Hodges from Centrica, thank you very much for speaking to us here on Sky News Sunrise.
Yeah, well, our correspondent Ashish Joshi is here for more on this. And Ashish, this is the last thing British Gas customers wanted to hear this morning, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a devastating blow for many households who are already struggling. This is going to be a lot of money they thought that they would not have had to spend. But what British Gas will say is they haven't increased prices for a good number of years and have kept their prices fixed, but wanted to stay in line with their competitors. They're answerable to their shareholders. We've just had a look at the breakdown of the big 6 who have raised the prices this year. And British Gas, although 12.5% seems quite high, it is high, but it's in line with their competitors. British E.ON went up by 14%, SSE by 14.9%, Empower by 15%. So what British Gas will say to you, in a competitive market, we have to stay with our competition. But what British Gas's customers will say is energy prices, wholesale energy prices, over the long term have been falling. So why are we having to pay so much more money? And you've heard the answer from British Gas this morning from Centrica's boss. He said it's because not of the wholesale price of the commodity, it's because of its transmission and distribution costs. In other words, the money that it costs us to get electricity into your homes is rising all the time. So we have to be a little more cost efficient, or at least profit efficient. But the response has been fierce. The government said energy firms should treat all their customers fairly, and we're concerned this price rise will hit many people already on poor value tariffs. Well, what lots of people will say, if you're that concerned, why didn't you introduce the price cap which you promised you would in the pre-election manifesto? They didn't. What they've said now is they're working very closely with Ofgem to protect their most vulnerable customers. Speaking to Ofgem this morning, they say these are talks we were having with the government before British Gas introduced this big price hike for September. So lots of things going on in the background. None of it will help customers who will be hit in September.
Yeah, looks like they're going to be the ones to lose out. Ashish, thanks very much. OK, let's get more now on our top story, the announcement that British Gas is increasing its electricity prices by 12.5%. Well, let's speak to Claire Osborne. Now, she's from Switch Energy. Hopefully, can give us a lot of advice on how, indeed, you can save money generally on our energy bills. But first of all, Claire, what's your reaction to this price hike?
Well, the news from British Gas today is that they're putting their prices up by £76 a year on their standard variable tariff. And they've held off doing that for 6 months whilst they extended their price freeze. But the customers really should not get lulled into a false sense of security with that. British Gas's standard tariff, like all standard tariffs, are some of the most expensive in the market. And with 17 million customers in the UK sitting on those tariffs, these price hikes that we've seen from British Gas and previously from other suppliers could really hit customers hard and push them into the red.
Yeah, but British Gas argued that actually this is in line with what their competitors have done when it comes to energy and electricity prices. They've also increased their prices and British Gas is just following suit.
It's true that this standard variable tariff from British Gas will be the cheapest of the big 6 standard variable tariffs, but like I say, that is a bit of a red herring to consumers. Standard variable tariffs are some of the most expensive tariffs in the market, and if you're on one, you're overpaying for your energy. The cheapest deal in the market today is over £280 more expensive than the British Gas standard variable tariff, and you can also fix your prices to protect yourselves from future price rises that might happen, as well as saving today. And that £280 is a saving every year you're on it. So one switch can make a big difference.
Yes, so essentially it's really about the consumer being savvy here. What can the consumer do? Could they leave British Gas and go on to another competitor for a better rate?
Certainly, my advice to consumers would be to vote with your feet and show that these price hikes just aren't acceptable. You can get a personalised comparison. That's very important to make sure you get onto the right tariff for you. And all it takes is 10 minutes. Grab your energy bill. All you need is your postcode and how much energy you use. And you can get an accurate comparison to see how much you can save. It takes 10 minutes, like I say, and you're away.
You say it takes 10 minutes, but for people who aren't maybe technology savvy, and usually the most vulnerable people who are always going to be affected by these price hikes, is there anything that could be done to get through to them, older people, people living with disabilities, to help them understand exactly what they can do to save money?
Yes, that's a really, really fair point. And that's why Uswitch has made a number of different ways of getting comparisons on your energy possible. And so for the less technically savvies, there are UK-based customer helpline where there is someone on the end of the phone who can talk you through it. Also, at the other end of the spectrum, if you are technically savvy and you really want to just do this quickly, we have an app which means that you can scan a QR code on your bill, and that'll mean that it'll pull all the information from your bill and present you results on what you can save automatically.
And how much hassle is it also to change providers? I mean, when you think about it, does it include lots of paperwork? Do you have to speak to 2 of the providers to make sure that they transfer properly? How much does this take out of your time when it comes to transferring and switching energy providers?
Switching energy is really simple. I can understand why someone who hasn't done it before would think otherwise, but in actual fact, it's really very, very straightforward. There is no interruption to your supply. There is no need to contact your previous supplier. What you need to do is just make sure you've selected the deal that you're on, and you give a closing meter read and an opening meter read to your new supplier, and you're away.
So then what is your thoughts then on Ofgem, the watchdog, in terms of what they could be doing to put pressure on these energy companies, not just British Gas, to bring those energy prices down when the wholesale prices fall, to make sure they pass that on to the consumer? Are you happy with their role in all of this?
We've seen some really good moves recently in terms of competition in the energy industry. There are now more than 50 suppliers in the energy market, and in fact there are 100 tariffs available today which are cheaper than British Gas's standard variable tariff. So it's certainly the case that there are lots of options for customers to switch to save a lot of money and to protect themselves from future price rises. What really is needed is a continued push to engage customers in the market and really inform them about how much they can save by selecting a better tariff than these expensive standard variable ones.
Now, when we start marching with our feet, as you mentioned, if we start doing that, will that then cause a change for these energy companies? Will they then start being more competitive with how much they're charging for their energy?
That's exactly the positive effects that we'd expect to see of competition. And by customers voting with their feet, that sends the signal to energy suppliers, both British Gas and otherwise, that they really have to keep their prices low and their customer service good to acquire customers. And like I say, there are energy suppliers out there in the market that are offering great deals. For almost the cheapest in the market today, you can switch, fix for 12 months, get renewable energy as standard, save over £250 and be protected from future price rises. That is a really good example of competition working when people vote with their feet.
That's it. That's the answer, isn't it, Claire? Make sure you speak with your feet. Thanks so much. Really good talking to you. Really good advice there for anybody wanting to shop around for another energy supplier. Well, let's talk more now on that British Gas and price hike in electricity bills. I'm joined now by Kevin Pratt. He's a consumer affairs writer at Money Saving Expert. And Kevin, I have to say, were you surprised about this 12.5% price hike in electricity bills for British Gas customers?
Not surprised by the timing of it, but surprised by the amount. In February this year, British Gas played quite a clever game, and all its rivals were increasing their prices. It announced it was going to freeze its prices until August, and it did so, but lo and behold, at 7 o'clock in the morning on the 1st of August, we get news of this eye-watering increase, which is scheduled to take effect on the 15th of September.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that this comes out in August. It's going to actually come into effect in September. So do you think British Gas are being a little bit smart here? This is something that potentially consumers won't really feel until going into the winter months.
You're absolutely right. Energy companies are obliged to give their customers a month's warning before they put their prices up, so you can see why they've gone early. But also, you're spot on. It's the middle of summer and energy bills aren't front of mind. We're using less heating, the lights are on less. Many of us are going away on holiday, so we're not thinking about how much energy we use in the cold, dark months of winter. But they'll come around soon enough, and that's when these price rises will begin to bite. So the advice has to be to anybody, not just British Gas customers, but anybody on a variable rate tariff should think very seriously about moving to a fixed rate tariff where the price you pay for each unit of energy is locked in for 12 months or 24 months or even longer. So you insulate yourself from future price rises, but also pay substantially less from today if you moved. Because fixed rate tariffs cost £200–300 less than variable rate ones.
OK, so if you go to a fixed rate tariff now, can you avoid that 12.5% price hike? And what happens if prices reduce, if prices fall? Will you then also not have that passed through to you because you're on a fixed rate tariff? OK, well, let's deal with switching tariffs first of all. It takes 5 or 10 seconds to run a quote on a price comparison website and you'll find better deals. And then once you initiate the switch, it should take 21 days for the switch to be complete. So you could be switched before the end of August if you took action before the end of this week. Okay, so that's one thing. Now you're locking in your prices for 12 months or 24 months. So if prices elsewhere tumbled, then you'd remain on that fixed price. But they've got such a long way to fall before they get anywhere near fixed rate tariffs that it would be astounding if variable rate tariffs became anywhere near the cheapest fixed rate tariffs. And if you're on a fixed rate tariff, there's nothing to stop you moving to a different tariff. You may have to pay an exit penalty in some cases, but very often the amount you pay to move from one switched account, fixed account to another can be offset by the savings that you make again. So it's really important that people think about finding a better deal than the one they're on at the moment. Oh yeah, really good advice, especially in terms of avoiding that 12.5% price hike in electricity bills. But what about then anybody out there who might not be very tech savvy, might not be able to use price comparison websites, the internet at all? How can you get through to those people, the elderly, those living with disabilities?
Well, I would suggest that if you have relations or friends who you think might benefit from switching their tariff, you talk to them about it and say, look, why don't you sit with me and we'll do it together? So if you have a parent or a neighbour who you think is paying too much because they've been loyal to their energy company for years and haven't benefited from any savings, go and help them do it. Failing that, many price comparison websites have a phone number, so you have to go online to find the phone number. Once you get it, you can ring us up and we can walk you through the switching process so you don't have to input the data onto the screen. So there are ways to do it, even if you are tech savvy and not comfortable using your computer.
Okay, well, let's look at what's going on in the energy sector in a little bit more detail, particularly with British Gas. Now, they're saying they increased the electricity prices from their point of view because of the rise in distribution costs. They even try to blame the government. The government policy costs have also been the reason why they've had to increase electricity prices. Does that wash with you?
Well, to a certain extent, because their costs have increased. The cost of distributing electricity around the country has increased. It's been 4 years since British Gas have put up their prices, so they've absorbed some of the costs for some of that time. They also have social obligations and they have green energy commitments imposed upon them by the government, and that can add to the cost pressures they face. But what I think is really important is not to worry about the justification for the cost increase. What really matters is the price differential between what they're charging and what other companies are charging their variable tariff customers and what's available on the market in terms of fixed rates. We don't need to know the reason why the variable rate tariff is £300 a year more than a fixed rate tariff. We don't need to know the reasons why it's going up by £76 a year. We just need to know that simple arithmetic. It's going up by that much. There are cheaper deals available. So let's have a think about moving to those deals and saving money.
So sadly, energy companies aren't really going to look after consumers. Consumers have to do their own homework. And Kevin Pratt, really good talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's get more now on the news that British Gas is to raise its electricity prices by 12.5% from the middle of next month. Claire Barrett is the personal finance editor of the Financial Times and editor of FT Money, and she joins us now. Claire, are they justified in raising their prices?
Well, British Gas, owned by Centrica, were the only company out of the big six who didn't raise their prices for customers last spring. So it's funny, isn't it? When one electricity company raises the prices, the others will generally all fall like a pack of dominoes. So people were expecting them to raise their prices, but it's quite an eye-watering amount, 12.5%. So for the average person on the so-called standard tariff, dual fuel, getting both electricity and gas from British Gas, will pay an extra £76 a year.
Now, you will understand how the gas bill breaks down and where the money goes to a lot better than probably a great number of British Gas users will. I mean, is this 16% justified? Are they spending 16% more on something?
Well, British Gas claim that they haven't made a profit for over a year now on the electricity that they're supplying to UK households. We'll look aside the fact that they've made about a 15% profit on the gas that they supply. But on the electricity, they say that the costs to them have been pushed up by government obligations for them to provide renewable energy, to invest in things like wind farms, solar energy, all of these kind of green projects that we're seeing in the news.
Sorry to interrupt you, but those green products are a tiny part of the bill, aren't they?
Yes, they are, but the engineering that the companies are doing with the bills mean that they're the part of the costs that are rising. So what's left to us, to consumers, if we're hit with this rise, which is going to come in for next month, is obviously to switch. But fewer and fewer people are switching. Only about 16% of us bothered to switch energy bills last year. Now that increased £75. You could save maybe up to £200 or even £300, depending on how big your house is, if you haven't changed provider for more than 2 or 3 years and you make a change. So it's kind of like a lazy tax on the consumers who don't bother shopping around. But what bothers me, and also bothers politicians, is that for some people it's very difficult to shop around, particularly if they're older or they don't have internet access and they can't get on price comparison sites that make it really easy for you to switch.
That amount is actually, quite small. I personally helped a couple that I know who are a little older switch, and they saved £1,000 because they'd been on the same tariff with the same provider for many, many years. So it really is worth doing, isn't it? People just need to sort of grab the metal, as it were, and just sit down and get someone to help them if they can't do it themselves.
Absolutely. Or if you've got elderly parents, the next time you pop round to see mum and dad, just say to them, what kind of bills are you paying on your electricity and gas? Because it could really surprise you. The standard tariff, I've campaigned in the FT for this to be renamed the most expensive tariff, because standard implies that it's normal. But 2/3 of people are on these tariffs, and in my experience, they're generally the most expensive ones. And it's only the people who bother switching who can lock in those savings.
370,000 people have left British Gas over the last year. I mean, do you get a sense that those who stay are being penalised for those who've left?
Well, it's the same for any energy customers, and the same goes for other utilities that you're buying on a regular basis, like broadband, you know, or even your mortgage provider. The motion in the ocean, if you like, for consumers is that loyalty is not what companies want to reward. It's the flirtatious switching between companies, which is the only way that you're going to get the cost of your bills to come down, and that's the same if it's an electricity or a gas bill, or how much you're paying for your broadband, or dare I say it, your internet television.
I mean, but people are starting to get used to it, aren't they? I mean, it certainly seems with, for example, car insurance, people are quite savvy to the fact that every year they need to change it. But we just need now to start lumping in our electricity and gas at that time, don't we?
Yes, and also the shift towards online billing, I think, is psychologically a big factor, because if you get a bill on your doormat which you open that says all of a sudden your monthly payments have jumped up by 15 or 20% because the good rate that you were on has come to the end of its 1 year or 18-month period, then you can't ignore it. But it's very easy, as we all know, to ignore an email. You get an email with a link to your bill, and you have to remember your password and log in. There's all of these kind of layers of obfuscation, if you like, that the companies can quite happily impose upon us. So take control. If you don't like the fact that you're a British Gas customer and your electricity bills are going up, then you can change. Eventually, whatever provider you switch to will put your bills up as well. So unfortunately, perpetual switching is the only way that we can keep away from this. Politicians haven't done anything that they promised.
Isn't also there the wider message to all of us that we actually need to use less, and we need to get a bit cleverer about when we are using our electricity and our gas, and not repeatedly boiling the kettle when it's absolutely full if we just need 1 cup of tea and things like that. You know, isn't the high prices a good prod to all of us that we need to actually start cutting back a bit?
Yes, and you believe it or not, FT readers are really into saving money on their energy bills. We had one couple write in to say that they put some Humbrol enamelled paint on their kettle, having poured in the exact amount it took for their 2 favourite cups of tea to boil, so that they weren't wasting money every year. I mean, that's only a small amount of money, overfilling the kettle. There are other things that you can do, like insulation. Many companies are now installing smart meters in people's homes. That really makes a difference when it comes to doing things like turning the lights off and working out who's left their Xbox on standby, etc., etc. So you can buy a plug-in device for yourself if smart meters aren't available in your area that can tell you those things. So we can use technology, or frankly just putting a jumper on when it gets a bit cold.
Indeed, Claire, who would have guessed that people reading the Financial Times would be quite savvy with money? Claire Barrett, good to talk to you. Thanks very much. Well, the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn used Twitter to criticise the government, saying, "Looks like the Conservatives have abandoned the energy price cap. Under Labour, everyone will have access to affordable, publicly owned energy." Well, let's talk to our chief political correspondent, John Craig, in Westminster. It is true, isn't it? The government did promise an energy cap. What's happened?
Well, it's been dropped. Lots of things have been dropped since the election. You're right. It was back in May. It was early May, where not only on a campaign visit, the PM, Theresa May, talked about this. She wrote an article in The Sun, 9th of May, I think it was. "It's clear to me the energy market's not working for ordinary working families. Too many people aren't getting a fair deal. If I'm re-elected on June the 8th, I'll take action to end this injustice by introducing a cap on unfair energy price rises." Sounds pretty clear, doesn't it? Well, it's been dropped. There was a battle in the cabinet. Some Tory ministers said it wasn't a very conservative policy. And you remember back in 2013 when Ed Miliband, as Labour leader, talked about an energy price freeze, not quite the same as a cap. He was absolutely ridiculed by Conservative politicians. David Cameron stood up in Prime Minister's questions and accused him of living in a Marxist universe. Now, the criticism from the Tories at the time, and George Osborne talked about this at the Tory conference that year, they claimed that the companies would just put their prices up before the freeze came in, so people wouldn't benefit at all. But this, of course, it's such a big political issue at the general election, and there will be those who say that this is a very significant U-turn by the Tories, that they've just handed it all over to Ofgem. Nothing's happened. Lib Dem leader, or former Lib Dem leader, Tim Farron, has made the point that about the whole point about switching. He says, as a former public utility, British Gas has a huge number of customers who don't switch, and is clearly treating these people like cash cows. One reason this is so political is because, of course, British Gas, like a number of energy companies, was privatised by Mrs Thatcher back in 1986. And there are those who say that the companies who are really ripping off customers now are those that were privatised by the Tories. And you've gone from a public a monopoly in the public sector to these private monopolies. And so it is something that the government will have to grapple with, be under pressure from some of its own backbenchers to grapple with as well, because this is a big rise. I suppose you could say that they're not the only company to do it, and some of the companies that are not private, former UK nationalised industries, like, for example, EDF, Electricité de France, who've already put their prices up. Well, they're not a privatised company, but a lot of them are. And so this has reopened the whole political debate about energy prices.
John, thanks very much.
Over 3 million British Gas customers face a hefty rise in their electricity bills. The company argues that its own costs have risen, and from September it will charge 12.5% more for electricity. So what does that mean? Well, a typical household on a dual fuel tariff will see its annual bill go up by an average of £76. It's the first increase from British Gas for nearly 4 years, but that hasn't stopped consumer groups and the government condemning the move. Our business editor Simon Jack reports.
Electricity, a basic need, a simple product. It's the same wherever or whomever you buy it from. If you buy it from British Gas, it'll be 12.5% more expensive from September, as the UK's largest supplier hiked prices for the first time in 4 years. Given wholesale costs have come down over that period, why raise prices now?
We do agree that over the last few years, since we dropped electricity prices the last time, wholesale costs have indeed fallen by about £36 on the typical bill. But we've seen these other factors of transmission and distribution costs and energy policy costs go up by nearly £100. That's the main driver.
Electricity may be a simple commodity, but the factors that influence its price are complicated. 22% of the bill is made up of the company's operational expenses. There's also 5% VAT in there. The wholesale price makes up 36% of the bill. That's the price at which the energy suppliers buy the energy they then sell on to us. British Gas concedes that this has actually fallen since the beginning of the year. Then there's the cost of delivering the electricity to our homes. That makes up 29% of the cost. Now, British Gas says rising costs here is one reason responsible for today's hike. But figures from Ofgem show these costs fell over the last year. The other one is government policy. That makes up 13%. That includes increased use of renewable energy and promoting energy-saving measures like insulation. British Gas says they are going up. Ofgem says yes, they are, but only by 2%.
No wonder some consumers are confused.
They make them as complicated as they can and people don't understand them. You know, the bills aren't very clear, I don't think.
I'm not sure where on earth British Gas are coming from, but I guess the other option you've got is choose a different supplier.
The fact that wholesale prices have stayed the same or going down as far as I'm aware, the fact they're putting them up, you know, for the consumer is pretty disgusting.
British Gas froze prices when others raised them earlier this year, so it's catching up with the rest of the pack. Consumer groups say it's government's responsibility to take industry-wide action.
Government needs to urgently look at what it does for those customers who are paying over the odds. There's been so much discussion about the energy market and that it doesn't work for consumers. The discussion needs to end and we need to see some action.
This dispute will end quickly.
According to the opposition, that action should include a cap on energy prices.
We've said from the Labour Party we'd introduce a price cap initially, but also we would develop alternative energy supplies so that this cartel that we have now cannot control pricing levels ever and hold us over a barrel ever again in the future. I think they're exploiting their customers.
Policies like capping energy prices to support working families.
The Conservatives had a cap in their manifesto. It was dropped from the Queen's speech, and now the government wants Ofgem to find ways to keep bills down. Energy remains a hot political issue. Simon Jack, BBC News.
And our political correspondent Alex Forsyth is in Westminster for us. The government's condemned this rise, Alex, but what can the government do? I mean, after all, we've just heard it was a big election issue.
Yeah, well, all political parties have condemned this price rise. Labour saying it's extortionate and unacceptable. The government saying it could affect customers who are already on the lowest value tariffs. But that question remains, what could and what should the government do? Now, Theresa May, as you say, had said during the election campaign the Conservatives would introduce an energy price cap. But when she lost her majority, that plan was shelved. That is in part because of Brexit. The government's already got a heavy programme of legislation, and they know not all Conservative MPs back the idea of a price cap, so that is not a parliamentary battle they want to enter into right now. They say the regulator Ofgem has sufficient powers, and they're waiting for the results of a consultation from Ofgem which could see proposals for a more limited cap, perhaps for the most vulnerable customers. But ministers insist the idea of a wider cap isn't off the table. That's something of a threat to the energy companies, saying if you don't take action, we could. But don't expect that anytime soon. For now, the government's keen to be seen to be talking tough on this.
All right, Alex, thanks very much.
Now, there is an oversupply of gas around the world. Wholesale prices are almost rock bottom, and yet British Gas has hiked its electricity prices by a searing 12.5%. Faced with a barrage of outrage, it states that this is the first rise in 4 years and blames government energy subsidies and the rising price of power transmission. Bottom line, the move will affect over 3 million customers and add around £76 to the average dual fuel bill. Consumer groups are predicting a mass switchover to cheaper suppliers. Here's our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy.
A hike in electricity prices probably won't move the dial for the residents of this upmarket square in West London.
Saving for a deposit to buy a house, so every penny counts.
But when Matthew Stolworthy finishes his day as a building manager here and heads to his home in the southeast, reality bites.
Obviously, you're thinking that you're sort of in a place of security with it, especially with a company like British Gas, and obviously not. And I've been taken for a ride.
He recently switched to a standard variable rate for gas and electricity because he thought it was fixed. Now he faces a near £80 increase in his bill.
I know that they make massive profits every year, especially in the last 6 months. What's the need to increase? You're just making it harder for people to live, and it's just not fair.
Introducing free electricity.
British Gas says it's been selling electricity at a loss, and that's hurting its UK business, though overall underlying profits were more than £800 million for the first 6 months of the year. One of the company's bosses said they had no choice but to hike prices.
You're a hugely profitable company. Wholesale prices are coming down. Anybody would look at this announcement today and say it's ludicrous that you're increasing prices. How do you justify that?
There have been some wholesale cost reductions. We reduced our gas price 4 times over the past 3 years, but the social costs, the policy costs, these kinds of costs are increasing more quickly than the reductions in wholesale. So that's the increase we're having to reflect today in our announcement.
According to the energy regulator Ofgem, the government's green energy costs make up around 7% of an average dual fuel bill, and it's increases here that Centrica is blaming today, as well as rising network costs. But by far the biggest chunk of the bill, about 40%, is the wholesale cost of energy, and since December that has fallen by around 13%.
Successive governments have tried and failed to rein in the energy firms, and there's no doubt today's increases will be embarrassing for Theresa May, who pledged before the election to put in place a price cap on energy bills, but then swiftly U-turned after losing her majority and after some pretty serious lobbying from the industry. Making matters worse, these increases will hit the very squeezed families that she's pledged to protect.
Today, the government hit back. It said its green policies could not explain the rises and warned, yet again, it hadn't ruled out taking further action.
Siobhan Kennedy reporting.
Back in the day, when the energy market was privatised, customers were told, of course, that competition between rival suppliers would force down prices. But that was then. Now, for more than 3 million British Gas customers, it doesn't seem to have turned out quite like that. The company, still the biggest supplier 20 years on, with profits of £1/3 of £1 billion, is putting up the price of its electricity by 12%. To be fair, it is British Gas's first price increase for a while, but that hasn't only upset its customers.
The government is trying to reduce Britain's carbon footprint, making electricity production cleaner. So it's out with coal and in with renewables. But today, British Gas blamed the cost of this transition for its decision to increase electricity bills. The boss of Centrica, which owns British Gas, is pointing the finger at government policy. The government is having none of it.
Every political party in Britain believes your company is profiteering. You have a problem, don't you?
We've held off with our price freeze in order to benefit our customers as long as possible. But we can absolutely justify these increases.
The price rise is controversial because the market price of gas and electricity has been falling, but British Gas argues that the wholesale energy costs make up only 34% of the final household bill. Distribution costs, the costs of delivering gas and electricity to homes, are as significant, and the government's environmental and social policies now make up at least 12% of final bills. And it is these costs that British Gas says have gone up significantly in recent months. The company's average dual fuel bill is rising to £1,120 a year to compensate. Some of British Gas's customers have had enough. It's high summer, so the Arapi family's energy consumption is low.
Thanks, Mum.
But from September, the company's price rise will bite.
12.5% just in time for winter. It's just not fair. And I certainly won't be staying with British Gas. I've been with them for quite a few years. Always seem pretty decent, but this time, no.
British Gas is Britain's biggest energy supplier, and by far, but the company's lost almost 200,000 customers to its rivals in the last 6 months, and higher bills could trigger more defections.
Consumer groups say the average British Gas customer on a standard variable tariff could save well over £200 a year by switching. Does that seem right to you?
If customers want to go to a very small supplier and the one that does not have the obligation to pay for the government costs.
But they could save that money.
They could save that money.
Well over £200 a
They
year.
could save that money at this present time.
The power to switch energy supplier is in your hands.
The savings available to those who switch energy supplier have been widely advertised, and yet many consumers stay put. British Gas argues it's because they're happy. Others see it as proof that the market is broken and needs fixing. Joel Hills, News at 10.
So what is this all about really? Was it inevitable? Do we just have to lump it? Or is it, as Joel was asking just a moment ago, some kind of profiteering? Well, some of the blame for today's rise has been laid at the door of the regulator Ofgem. The government said it needs to get on with things. But what happened to that election campaign promise of the Prime Minister to cap energy price rises?
In the 80s, we were told privatisation was the future.
Are you Sid? Yes. Oh, boy, have I got a message for you.
Encouraged to buy shares in industries like British Gas, we were also told a competitive market would keep prices low. Nearly 30 years on, you could argue it isn't working. Our taxpayers now paying the price.
Well, on the one hand, it has worked in that it secured new investment in an energy system that was chronically underinvested in throughout the decades of public ownership, and it's also allowed new entrants to come into the market and supply energy. But the issue now is not about who owns the energy system, but what do we want it to do, and what should it do for consumers and for industry.
More recently, politicians have argued an energy cap is the answer, limiting price hikes for 17 million people on standard variable rates. So potent is the issue at the moment, Theresa May made it front and centre of her election campaign.
The government I lead will keep taxes low and cap rip-off energy tariffs to help families who are working all the hours they can to pay the bills.
Along with her majority, though, the policy was wiped out. With no immediate plans to legislate, the government's passed the onus onto the regulator. It wants Ofgem to use its powers and has asked them to look at ways of protecting those on the worst tariffs. It says in response, Ofgem has committed to taking prompt action to develop proposals, including a safeguard tariff. We want to see rapid progress on this commitment and are ruling nothing out. It was Labour who first touted an energy cap, and today they still insist government should have a much bigger role.
We said, first of all, we'd have a price cap, but in addition to that, we'd start developing public ownership of our energy supplies, so we wouldn't be held over a barrel by the big energy companies in the way that we are at the moment. This is exploitation of customers as far as I can see.
The simple fact is no one appears willing to take responsibility. Both the industry and the government are blaming each other for crippling charges. We now have to wait to see what Ofgem come up with, and if it's not tough enough, the government has promised to take further action. And then, of course, the next argument will be what that action is. Emily Morgan, News at 10 in Westminster.
And Joel is here. Well, Joel, as Emily was saying there, it feels like everyone's putting the ball back in the regulator's court. Lucky regulator. What's it going to do, do you think?
It will do something, Tom. On that, I'm absolutely convinced. Whether it will be a price cap or something short of that, I think remains yet to be seen. There's no doubt this manifesto pledge has been backed away from. The buck has been passed to Ofgem. The regulator's mulling something. But it's clearly inclined to do something, because Centrica's position today that we're doing the right thing by customers, and that actually is the consensus point from all of the big energy companies, doesn't wash with politicians. There's a broad political consensus now that prices are higher than they should be, that customer service is too poor, that customers, for whatever reason, whether they're confused or apathetic, aren't switching in the way that in a functioning market you'd expect them to, and that something needs to happen. There was a clue, though, I think, about what's now likely to happen next. Greg Clark, a few weeks ago, wrote to Ofgem. He urged them to take action to protect millions of customers on standard variable tariffs. These are the contracts that people often default onto, which represent, in the government's view, very poor value. Well, today, Centrica suggested that these should actually be phased out. The first time it's done it, I think there's a concession there that they know which way the wind is blowing. That's quite likely. Will Ofgem impose a price cap? I'm not sure. They may extend it, but I think it's likely to be more sophisticated than something like that.
OK, Joel, we will see. Thank you very much.
I've been getting away with it all